low orbit bases. Every builder in No Man's Sky either has built one, attempted, or dreamt about it. And after years of making guides and building my own, I still learn new things about how it actually works. Today I will share with you all I have learned and discovered over the last 4 years of building low orbit bases. Apart from sharing the techniques with you, I will also pull away the curtain and show you the mechanics of the game and what you should be aware of when building a low orbit base of your own. If you want to skip ahead to the techniques, you can do so, but you probably will miss out on a lot of great information, and it would not surprise me if you have to come back and see why it did not work for you. So, before we jump into building techniques, it is crucial to understand the theory behind building low orbit bases. Every planet in the game is different and will influence your approach to the creation of your low orbit base. Each planet has a different terrain, comes with bodies of water or is waterless, and others are just dead and empty. All of that will influence the limits of where you can build your base. So you need to take this all into account before even placing your base computer. Let us take this planet here. Each planet in No Man's Sky has an atmosphere, even the empty ones. I know certain planets are marked as having no atmosphere, but there clearly is a point when approaching the planet where an atmosphere is detected. For the perfectionist out there, let's just say this is the gravity well. Now, the planetary atmosphere is not the same as the planetary build radius. To understand the planetary build radius, we need to look at the planet's surface. So let us place a few mountains on this planet. Now, to make it very simple and keep this explanation short, let me show you exactly what the building limit looks like on this specific planet. As you can see, the planetary building limit is actually following the surface of the planet. It even can break through the planetary atmosphere. And yes, indeed, it is possible to build outside of the atmosphere, but only when meeting a few conditions. Because the thing is, when your character steps outside of the atmosphere, apart from suffocating, you will also not be able to open up your build menu, and with that, it doesn't allow you to build. If you however stand inside the atmosphere, you can open up your building menu and build outside of that atmosphere. Well, if it's of course within the planetary build limit. So in short, if the character is standing inside the atmosphere and the planetary building limit, you can build in that building limit, even when it's out of the atmosphere. I do hope this explanation with visuals makes sense. To be honest, trying to tread that limit is pretty risky, and if you're not careful, it can result in your base or part of it disappearing. It's always smart to build with a buffer, so none of your hard work gets destroyed. I do, however, felt it was necessary to explain this, as it will help you to understand why somebody could tell you that they managed to build outside of the atmosphere. I would not recommend it for the reasons I explained before, and also that it makes your base unusable because you are running out of oxygen all the time. Another mechanic I would like to explain is the claiming of base computers. In the techniques I will share with you, you will be using a second base computer in low orbit, and you will need to be able to claim it. This is why you need to understand how claiming bases work. When claiming a base, the game will check with the No Man's Sky servers to see if any other bases are nearby, or if an area is already claimed by somebody else. While this mechanic is not 100% airtight, most of the time it will block you from claiming a base computer when you build it inside the radius of another claimed base computer. The standard radius of a base computer is 300 U. This means I can actually claim a base computer just outside of that radius, and still will overlap partly with the area of the other base. That can be both a curse and a blessing, depending on what it's used for. Now, when someone has extended their base radius, let's say for example 1000 U, it will also block out that area of being able to be claimed. If you would like to learn more about extending the base radius, I made a detailed guide about how it works in this video, and I will link it in the description. Now, the thing is, it also applies for your own base computers. If you want to claim a second base computer, it needs to be outside of the radius of your first one. Now, some of the techniques we will be using today will make it so we are actually extending our base radius. Therefore, to be able to claim our second base computer, it has to be placed outside of 1020 U from the first base computer. This information is very important because if we look back at the building radius and the atmosphere limit, we should avoid starting our build on mountains or hills. Otherwise, we might not be able to claim our second base computer. In my previous guides, I did get the question several times why claiming a second base computer. Wouldn't the first base computer be enough to build a low orbit base? To explain this, I would like to refer back to our animation. The building radius of a base computer is a bubble, which means that the center of the bubble is where the largest buildable area is. The higher in the bubble, the smaller the radius becomes. So building all the way on top of that bubble will drastically reduce the radius of my base. Therefore, by claiming a second base computer in the sky, I restore the original radius I can build in. I prefer to build my low orbit bases on empty or dead planets. The advantage is that no matter what time of day it is, you always have a nice star field as background, which makes your builds also more believable. Other planet types will have weather and environmental events you perhaps want to avoid, and clouds can also be a pretty annoying feature as they clip through your bases at times. Still, it all depends on the style you're going for. When picking out a starting point for my base, I look for a low section on the planet, avoiding any high ground or mountains. If you have a planet with water, it is a smart idea to build your base at the water level. This will improve your success rate of building a low orbit base. Alright, another piece of information. Apart from creative mode, you most likely want to power your base, preferably with an EM field. The advantage of an EM field is that the effective radius is a cylinder and not a bubble. So whatever power the EM field has on the surface of the planet, you will also have in the sky. I like to mark my power hotspot with a save beacon, which then can serve as a marker and a saving point for the manual saving. Talking about saving, since the waypoint update, No Man's Sky has changed how the saving systems work. And while I and many others are not a big fan of it, we need to make do with what we have. Thankfully, we can use both saving techniques to ensure we do not make any mistakes. First, we have the autosave. This is an automatic save that occurs every few minutes, but only seems to save when your character is in motion. When you leave your character standing perfectly still, there will be no auto-saving. The second save is the restore point, and this is done by manual saving, jumping in and out of your ship, or claiming a base computer, and so on. This is a save you have ultimate control over, while the first save is a less reliable point of return. We will be using both of these saves in this guide, so pay close attention to which one I'm using. Finally, we can now jump into the actual techniques. There are 4 techniques you can use for building a low orbit base, one more effective than the other. The first technique and the oldest is by using walls or stairs to build up into the air. This technique takes most effort and resources, but also is the most reliable and precise of techniques. It also allows you to perfectly build your base above any EM hotspot you picked. If you have a power hotspot, just drop your base computer right on top of it. After claiming it, you start with building a wall at the same level as the base computer. Before we go any further, it's now a good time to either manually save or jump in and out of your ship. After this, we no longer use our ship or manual saves until we are sure there are no mistakes made. On top of the first wall, we will stack 9 more walls until we have 10 walls in total. To easily keep track of the count, I will place another wall on the side of the 10th wall. If you would prefer to use stairs, you can build your stairs going back and forth like this until you reach the same height. The advantage is that the stairs and walls are the same height, so it's easy to keep count of how many stairs you will need. In total, we want to build 315 walls stacked on top of each other. Every 10 walls I place another piece on the side, and every 50 and 100 I mark them differently. It will make it much easier to keep track when losing count. At a certain point, you will however reach the maximum radius of your build camera. You can proceed in 2 ways from here. Either you build a little platform on one of the walls and then jetpack along the wall up to it. As long as you face the wall while jetpacking, you will not lose any fuel. Once you're on the top of the floor, you can now continue building more walls. Another way is using the camera extension glitch. Once you reach the limit of your build camera, simply double press the button you used to activate the camera in the first place. That will recenter the camera at your current position and allow you to move higher up. You can keep doing this until you finish building all the walls. Depending on what platform you're playing on and how well rendering works, you might start falling through the terrain using this technique. While there are ways to avoid this, they do not always work 100%. So if this happens to you, I would advise you to use the first technique instead. Once you're finished with building 315 walls, you open up your build library and select the regular landing pad. Snap the landing pad against the top wall like this. Now we can exit the build camera. Open up your options menu and check the time of your autosave. It normally should be a few minutes old. Once you start moving, the autosave should trigger. You can double check the time on your save to see if you did. If not, just walk around a little more until the autosave is updated with a more recent time. Now take note, I still did not do any manual saving. We will be using the autosave to reload and check if all the walls and the landing pad are still there. If the landing pad is still there, that means we are still inside the building limit. In case the landing pad disappears and or the walls are missing, you moved outside of the building limit. This probably means you failed to follow one of the suggestions I gave at the beginning of the video. It also means you won't be able to build your second base computer. So either you just delete your base computer, which is gonna cost you 50% of the used resources, or you reload your manual save, which should bring you back to the time before you started building the walls, and then remove the base computer. Now you will have to look for a better and probably a lower location. Let us assume you succeeded and the landing pad is still there. So jump in your ship, fly toward the landing pad and land your ship. Jumping outside of your ship will now create a manual save. This will be our next checkpoint. It is now time to build the second base computer and claim it. There is a possibility that it will not be allowed, but that's okay. Pick it up again, then build it again into the air, and if it's red stated, just enable free placement. Normally you should just lift the base computer at the height of another wall. Once built, try claiming it again. This should normally have worked, but in case it did not, you can pick it up once more and build it a little higher, let's say 2 walls high. You should normally be able to still reach it from the landing pad. When claiming the base computer, you will now have made another manual save, which is your next checkpoint. It is a good idea to reload that restore point to see if the second base computer is still there. If you did everything according to this guide, it should be still there. If it's not, then I'm sorry, but that's a base computer you lost. From now on, we will not do any manual saves anymore, at least not until we're done and happy. The last thing we want to do is now check how much more space we have above our second base computer. When opening the build menu and select the walls again, you should now see that you're building on the same name of the second base computer. Simply snap a few walls on top of the 315 walls of before. Normally you should not build more than 20. 335 walls in total is more than enough. Now we just need to wait until our autosave has activated. Just walk around the landing pads and regularly check if the time has refreshed. Once the autosave happens, reload the game again from that autosave and check how many walls are left. You should easily be able to count how many walls are missing. So this means your base limit ends right here. Now we can reload the restore point, and that should bring us back to the point where we claimed the base computer. Now that we know how high we can still build, we can now prepare the foundation for our low orbit base. Open the build menu, select the wall and just double check if you're still building on the second base computer, which should be normally the case. Place a wall somewhere here, select your landing pad and snap it against it. Alright, almost done. Currently you have 2 base computers. These walls here are built on the first base computer, and this wall and the landing pad are built on the second base computer. Now, while you could manually delete all 315 walls on your way down, I believe it's not worth the time and resources. So just travel back down to the planet's surface, delete that base computer there, and that should remove all the walls and the old landing pad. Now, if you're wondering where all those deleted resources went, just build a base salvage capsule, and there you will find 50% of the resources from any deleted bases. If you look up, you will now see the new landing pad. Call in your ship, fly up to the landing pad and land. You can reload the game once more to double check, but this should be it. You can now start building your own low orbit base. A variety of this technique is leapfrogging between platforms. You do not even need a starter base computer. You can just build a roamer bay in the sky, then jetpack up to it, then build another platform higher up, jetpack to that one, then move the roamer bay up again to jetpack to that one, and just keep doing that. The problem with this technique is that you do not have an exact measuring method and you are not sure where the build limit is or if you even reached it. Building a base computer is a gamble because it's either too low or you simply build it too high and it's gone with the reload. As a general rule of thumb, you should always be below the clouds to do your first test. And even then, sometimes the clouds are higher than the build limit. So it is a pretty risky technique and totally up to you to decide if it's worth it. A third method is using the animation after claiming the base computer. This technique is the lowest in effort and easy to fix if a mistake is made, but many builders have found the distance finicky and not trustworthy. Much like the first technique, you look for the ideal position for your base, preferably at a low elevation and with a power hotspot. There you place your base computer. Now it's time to focus, as all the work will need to happen in the next 5 seconds after claiming the base computer. So let me mentally prepare you for what happens. First, when claiming the base computer, that is when the game is manually saved. That means that is your checkpoint, the save to return to if you made a mistake. Second, we want to build a landing pad during the zoom out animation, so be familiar with the library of parts so you can easily find it back. Also, you will need to enable free placement, otherwise you will not be able to build it in the air. A good strategy is having free placement enabled before you claim your base. You can do that by selecting a part like a save beacon or a refiner and enable free placement on that part, then just return from the building menu. The game will now remember the free placements being enabled. Now, before we go and claim the base, a quick rundown of what will happen. The camera will zoom up to a top view. At a certain point, the zoom will stop and hold for a while. Then the camera will start zooming in again towards the planet. Once you press claim base and the zoom begins, you need to enable the build menu, select the landing pad and be ready to place it. If by any chance the landing pad is red, enable free placement. Wait until the camera starts zooming in again and start counting 2.5 seconds, 21, 22 and place. That is when you place the landing pad. If you did it correctly, a landing pad should be floating in the sky. Now it can happen you do not see the landing pad during the zoom. Sometimes it seems the part is behind the camera. Don't panic, just wait until the zoom in starts, count the seconds and place it either way. If the landing pad did not place, we can easily fix it. Now the landing pad is placed, we need to check if it's within the building limits. So it's time to walk around until the autosave is triggered. Once the autosave is triggered, reload to that. If the landing pad is still there after the reload, you can move on to the next step. However, if the landing pad disappeared or you could not place it during the zoom in, we need to do that again. So reload the restore point, which should bring you back to the time when you claimed the base computer. Okay, now some builders will remove the base computer, rebuild another one and then claim it again. However, building and claiming several base computers on the same spot is not a smart move and can cause some corrupted bases. So try it my way. In your building menu, you should have a signal booster. Place that next to your base computer and scan for nearby structures. This should activate the same animation as the base computer and you can try building the landing pad again. If by any chance the signal booster does not activate, you can also use planetary charge, which should trigger the same animation. You can now repeatedly reload to the restore point and try over and over again until the landing pad is placed and stays there after an autosave is done. When the landing pad is finally placed and stays, you can now hop onto the ship and fly to the landing pad. Jumping out of the ship will trigger the manual save or the restore point. Now the next steps depend on how close you manage to build the landing pad against the build limit. As you can see in my case, I am not able to build a base computer at the height I'm at. That is because I'm still in the building bubble of the first base computer. Now if you're happy with the height you're at, then you can simply start building right from that landing pad. But if you remember, I prefer not to risk ending up with a small building area, so I want to build a second base computer. To do that, we need to learn a little from the first technique, which means building up walls to find the limit. Make sure you're not manual saving during any of the next steps, as we have no idea where the limit is. So we will build some walls up, trigger the autosave as usual, reload and see if the walls are still there. If some walls are missing, count the amount you have left and reload to the restore point. That should be the time where you landed the ship. After that you can build just enough walls as you counted before. If all walls are still there, you can now travel up to the highest point and build your base computer. If we're still not able to claim the base computer, we need to raise the walls even higher. Once again, we trigger and reload the autosave and check if any walls are missing. In my case, we're still good, so let me build up the base computer on top again and see if I can claim it. Claiming this base computer will now save and set a restore point. After that, it is pretty similar to the previous method. Building up a set of walls, reload the autosave, check if the walls are still there, count how many are left and you know how high your base can be. Reload to the restore point and that should bring you back to the point where you claimed the second base computer. Now it's just a matter of building a second landing pad on that second base computer, removing the first base computer and start building your own low orbit base. The last technique is the Titanfall technique, without a doubt the most badass way to build a base. This technique requires you to jump down to the planet from your freighter or frigate, It is by far the coolest way to do this, but it's prone to fail a lot and also dangerous if you're doing this on normal or permanent. It does not take a lot of effort, but it does take a lot of time. The trick with this method is to place your freighter in such a location that if you jump from it, you fall towards a planet below it. However, the precision is terrible and hardly ever has you landing on the location you want, so trying to catch an EM hotspot is gonna be tough. You will also be falling for a long time through space, which means it's gonna be freezing cold and there is no oxygen, so you will constantly need to recharge your life support. Once you hit the atmosphere, you will be safe, at least from the hazards. Since the latest guide I made about this, we did discover some new glitch building techniques, and with that an updated way to do this technique. If you prefer not to glitch build, then you can still do this using the old technique. If you're doing this in creative, you do not even need to worry about all the materials and life support if you want to build. But in normal or in permadeath, if you're insane enough, you will have to prepare. First, you need to have the resources in your inventory to build each part. For the building materials, you will need 50 metal plating, 100 gold, 6 iron batteries, 2 microprocessors and 30 chromatic metal. If you're doing this the old-fashioned way, you will also need a good stack of life support. However, with the technique I will show you, you will not need any life support. Another thing you should keep in mind is your jetpack technology. If you are a beginning player and you hardly have any upgrades, then this technique might be too difficult to complete. So purchase some S-class jetpack modules at the station and if needed, temporarily place them in a supercharged slot. Alright, we begin at the planet where you wish to build your low orbit base at. From the planet's surface, we call in the freighter. You do have a bit of control of where the freighter spawns, so if you have the time and patience, you could try and place the freighter in a perfect location to drop on top of an EM field. If you wish to go that way, I would advise you dropping a safe beacon as a marker. Now it is time to jump in our ship and land onto the freighter. Now you could either use a frigate or a freighter to jump down to the planet, but with the technique I will share with you today, there will be no other choice than going with the freighter. The plan is to build a Minotaur bay on the freighter, which can be done by using the cash pin glitch. Now, as this guide is not about glitch building, I will share with you the link to this guide in the description of the video. What we want to end up with is a Minotaur bay at the back of the freighter, as close as possible to the edge. From here on, the method is the same, no matter if you jump with the Minotaur or yourself. The only difference is that you need to keep an eye on your life support and recharge it if you're not using the Minotaur. Below on the planet, you can see the marker you placed. If the location is important to you, you will need to take the time to move your freighter accordingly. For this guide, I will not care about that. Simply walk to the edge of your freighter and jump from it. Now it will take some time before you hit the atmosphere, so I have some time to explain what needs to happen. If you're jumping without the Minotaur, don't forget to recharge your life support. At a certain point, we will be entering the planet's atmosphere. It will be very clear when this happens, as you will hear a bleeping sound and a notification will pop up on the top left of your screen. At the moment this happens, you need to immediately exit your Minotaur and start counting down 30 seconds. During these 30 seconds, you should open up your building menu and select Minotaur Bay. Aim it downwards a little away from you, and if it shows red stated, make sure it's set to free placement. It also does happen it stays red because you're holding the bay too close to your character, so move it a little bit further away if needed. Once the 30 seconds are up, build the Minotaur bay and jetpack upwards. Land on the platform, and that should be the hardest part of this technique. Now we can build our base computer on top of the platform and claim it. This will however create a manual save. This means this base computer is there permanently no matter if it's too high. That means if you made a mistake, you will not be able to remove the base computer anymore. Therefore, since Waypoint, this has become a very risky technique. Anyway, we are here, no point backing out. Let us build a landing pad here and then either call in our ship or drop down to the planet and fly back up. With landing, we make another manual save, so we need to reload and see if the base computer is still visible. If not, then bad luck, especially on console. There are some tricks to remove hidden bases, but the methods are very complicated and therefore not worth sharing in this video. But if the base computer still shows after reloading, then you succeeded and are ready to build a low orbit base. Alright guys, I think I've shared everything I know about low orbit bases and how to build them. This took quite some time to put together, so I really hope this helps you out and gives you all the info needed to start one of your own. If you have any questions or perhaps tips I might have missed, you can drop them in the comments below. Or join our Discords and drop your questions or even your pictures of your low orbit bases there. If you enjoyed the video and found it helpful, please hit that thumbs up, it really helps out the channel. Thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Goodbye for now.